Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Who will it be a Happy New Year for? That's where we start tonight as we take advantage of the fact that 2018 is still in its warm-up phase to look at politics here and how it might evolve. Now, as always, the big battle is the one between the Conservatives and Labour, and rarely has the choice between them been as stark. So how a minority Conservative government gets on and whether Labour can threaten it is an obvious issue for the year ahead. But in some ways, a lot of the action in politics these days is within the two main parties. They both have huge, great cracks down the middle of them, and yet both have survived 2017 in one piece. Can they really survive the storms of Brexit and 2018 without at least one of them suffering a big rupture? Well, we'll reflect on that shortly, but first, Chris Cook has been looking at the queue of storms heading the way of the government in 2018.
The government is facing an Olympiad of challenges this year. Here are 5 events that will probably define whether 2018 is remembered as a success. The most important one, of course, is Brexit. We're heading to leave the EU in the spring of next year, but the initial deal, whatever it is, needs to be agreed by this autumn, so we have time to get it through the various parliaments. Ireland remains a big issue for a deal. A lot of Brexiters want to diverge from the EU's rulebooks and want the UK, including Northern Ireland, to move as a single bloc. But our government has already agreed there may need to be full alignment with those rules of the internal market and the customs union which relate to cooperation on the island of Ireland. That seems irreconcilable. There may also be difficulties managing expectations. The EU has said our current negotiating position means we will only get a deal like that granted to Canada or Korea. And we won't get details of that signed off in the coming year, only outline principles. The economy has been wheezing a little lately as well. Anemic growth was the norm before the referendum, it's what we've had since, and it remains the expectation for the coming years. That will mean a continued squeeze on wages. One of the most painful facts of life about post-crisis Britain looks likely to continue. Weak growth will also mean weak tax revenue growth, and that complicates tasks like the introduction of universal credit. It would always be hard and fiddly, but doing this on a budget makes everything harder. The benefit being much less generous than it had been planned to be adds a lot of pain into the mixture. The NHS and social care are another troublesome problem. The care services are desperate for money. We're well off our targets at the moment. So far, the public has seemed quite relaxed about longer waits, but the clinical problems it creates are mounting and public indifference may soon turn. Finally, keep an eye on universities. While well shielded from austerity, they are perhaps the most pro-Remain sector in the country and they're having their funding reviewed. And a new regulator's coming in, which has already caused some consternation. If you are trying to foment a culture war, it's hard to think of a better way to get going. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, precisely because polls suggest the British public aren't optimistic, so a middling finish might be greeted quite warmly. But it's certainly a gruesome set of obstacles ahead for a minority government.
Chris Cook's guide to the government's challenges. In terms of the Labour opposition, 2017 was quite a year, one in which old rules were broken, particularly the rules of thumb by which political experts managed to look like experts. Here's a very quick look back at our New Year programme this time last year and what our panel had to say about Jeremy Corbyn. Ignore the fact that the guests are sitting at school desks. No one can remember what we were thinking, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. The question I put was, can Labour recover?
It is very difficult to see how Labour can move on from its current situation.
Actually, when the polls get it wrong, they tend to understate Labour, not overstate Labour. So if they're wrong, they're quite likely to be wrong the other way around.
But obviously Corbyn's no good, but he may go. Imagine that Ed Balls came back into Parliament. Imagine Ed Balls was leading the Labour Party. Imagine that Theresa May stumbles bad.
I mean, actually, I think it's worse than you're saying, though, for Corbyn, because what I get in focus groups is it's not that people don't like him. He is literally irrelevant.
OK, well, that was last year. You're going to see some of those faces again. We're joined by the LBC presenter Ian Dale, the founder of Britain Thinks, Deborah Mattinson, who you heard there, Faiza Shaheen, who's the director of the Centre for Labour and Social Studies, and by the Times columnist Matthew Parris. Matthew and Deborah, I think we should start with last year, and you weren't the only ones who said it, obviously, and you got a lot right, by the way. But what do you think? What happened last year? Yeah, we didn't show. What happened last year, Deborah, that the pundits did get Corbyn wrong?
The central thing that happened was younger voters turned out to vote. And, you know, when you're predicting what's going to happen in an election, the best tools that you have are how people have behaved last time, right? So what we all did, and this is why it wasn't just pollsters, but it was politicians, it was canvassers, everybody out there kind of read the runes wrongly because everybody was assuming that young people, as they have done in the past, had said they were going to vote, and yes, they would support Labour, and then not turn out. And this time, the experts were confounded and they did turn out. That was the single thing that made the biggest difference.
And the really interesting question, and Matthew, have a go at this. Will young people turn out next time? Or what would be the working assumption now?
Well, I don't know why you're asking us, as we got it so wrong last time. We should get some new pundits in.
Well, we could talk to Pfizer in a minute. Yeah,
but I think you should never underestimate the Conservative Party's capacity to fail to enthuse the population. And it wasn't just Jeremy Corbyn's success, but the Conservative Party just didn't fizz. And I think younger people want a bit of fizz, and perhaps we all underestimated the hunger for that.
Faiza, what do you think happened? I mean, and how do you think these rules, these new rules that prevailed last year, will last? Will we go back to the old style of business, or do you think it'll be...
I think we make a mistake when we make this about individuals or specifics of rules. What's happened is that a number of conservative ideologies, whether they be about the way we run the economy, whether it be about the way in which austerity has spectacularly failed and cost people in society, or whether it be, you know, the setup on Brexit, it's that a lot of people can see that these ideas aren't delivering anymore. Things have changed. How do we expect young people to support market fundamentalism when they themselves don't have any capital? You can't be capitalist when you don't have any capital, right? So, you know, we look at this issue of young people, or we you know, chalk it up to individuals, but there's something much deeper here, and it's about the way in which the plates of society and the economy are shifting.
So it's a substantive, it's for the time, because things have changed and people just change their views accordingly. Look, OK, there are three battles in politics, within the Tories, within Labour, and between Tories and Labour. And let's go back to the Tories. Ian Dale. We didn't play your election predictions in.
No, just as well.
Pretty bad. Ian, look, the Tories have held it together for the last year. Do you think they get through 2018 intact as a party?
I think Theresa May's objective was to make it to Christmas. She made it to Christmas, quite unbelievably in some ways. The chance to get rid of her was on June the 9th, and they didn't do that. And since then, there hasn't been a sort of king or queen over the water. There isn't a single person that the Tory party could unite around and replace Theresa May with. And that's still the case now, and I think that will probably still be the case this time next year. So I think she will still be in position, and I think she's in a lot stronger position than people actually think. I think she's in a strong enough position now to carry out quite a wide-ranging reshuffle on the basis she can say, well, OK, I dare you to get rid of me.
Including Boris. Including Boris
and including the Chancellor. I think she can move both of them, but I certainly think she can move one of them. So, and the big battles over Brexit, I might regret saying this, the big battles have kind of been had in 2017. The big battle this year will be in the House of Lords, and that could be a lot trickier for Theresa May than anybody realises, because we have this two-year Parliament. So they can't invoke the Parliament Act until after we've left the EU, until after the deal has been done. So the only way out of that is if the House of Lords really cut up rough, the only way out of that is a general election.
I rather question your confidence in her longevity. She's like a ping-pong ball balanced on a fountain.
No, she's like a weeble. She wobbles, but she never falls down.
Well, she has no weight of her own, and one stumble, one accident, and accidents happen in politics, I think.
But there have been so many, haven't there, since the election? You look at how she stumbled over Grenfell, you look at the various machinations over Brexit. I think she's got through those. And
but
you're right.
What's this Brexit's all sort of sorted out now?
I didn't quite say that.
Come on, we're going to be confronted with Norway or Canada Pfizer, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, really, the conversation about Brexit this year will throw up so much, yes, in the House of Lords, but also in terms of trade. And trade isn't just about the movement of goods anymore. It's also going to be about, you know, that issue of movement of people. And just so much is going to have to undone and redone this year. And when we have a Conservative Party that isn't united, that doesn't have a vision for Brexit...
And Labour does?
I think that Labour is in a much better position to offer something different.
What does easy movement mean? Because that seems to be their solution. Easy movement. No one can define it.
I'm going to come to Labour, and I want to just focus on the Tories. Because, I mean, Deborah Pattinson, do you think there's a Brexit that holds the Tory party together, that there's one that can satisfy all of them?
No, I mean,
on offer?
No, I actually, to be fair though, I don't think there's one that holds the Labour Party together either.
Right.
And that's the problem. I mean, our work at Britain Thinks says there are three groups of people. There's a group of people we call the diehards, who are very passionate about Brexit. There's a group of people we call the devastated pessimists, who sort of have their heads on their desks and are beside themselves with sorrow. They're about a third each, and then there's a third in the middle who are sort of swing voters, who are a bit more relaxed either way. It's very hard to envisage any kind of solution that will keep everybody happy.
I think there is a Brexit that can more or less reconcile the Conservative Party, and so I'm with Ian. This issue may never really explode. The Brexit that will, in the end, satisfy the Conservative Party is that we formally leave the European Union, but to all intents and purposes, stay within the European Union.
But that won't satisfy...
That satisfy you. It wouldn't satisfy me. I doubt whether it would satisfy many others.
So what we have to do, we have to reel people like you in, like a fish, very gradually, as realism
I'm not very reelable.
Wow. Yeah, this is another area where, again, the Conservatives are not going to deliver. They've built up these promises and they are going to fail. And people are going to be angry about that.
Well, let's come to Labour then, Pfizer, because, I mean, Labour have held it together, basically, by not saying anything, really, on anything. Have they? I mean, and that might be the right tactic, is just to stay quiet and let the Tories, you know, make...
Well, of course. I mean, of course, there's political tactics. I think the thing that's really clear about what Labour offered in the last election and what really worked was when the manifesto came out and they talked about, you know, bringing rail back into public ownership. They talked about housing. They talked about what they would do with homelessness and education and the NHS. And they offered something different to people. They offered something different to young people.
They offered bribes. That's what they offered. Unfunded bribes.
No, they offered a different way in which to run the economy, one that runs
more
for the
money
people.
For everything, and people bought it.
It's more than that, though, isn't it? There was a poll yesterday that suggested that more people feel that Labour's values are closely matched to their own values, many more than feel the same about the Conservatives. But that then begs a bigger question, which is, if that's the case, how come the Conservatives are polling so much further ahead of their own value
Why is it
match?
basically level pegging?
And why? Yeah, I mean, and the polls are stubbornly.
And Theresa May still outranks Jeremy Corbyn as best Prime Minister.
Matthew,
by quite
a mile.
some way, actually. Yes.
Can you envisage Labour pulling significantly ahead to the kind of level of...
Yes, I can, because I can't underestimate the Conservative Party's ability to disgust the electorate. We're going to see in the London elections in May what happens to the Tories in London. And the British people may want to vote for a mangy aardvark rather than vote for the present Conservative Party. My party. That's what worries me.
Is this the year where we get off Brexit as a conversation? Is it possible that we can talk about something? I'm just going to... You know, the headlines of the newspapers tomorrow: NHS tells hospital to cancel all routine operations in the Telegraph. Winter crisis cripples NHS in the Mail. Guardian on the same topic.
Brexit is ahead as the issue that people are most concerned about, right, at 51%. But the NHS is now 45%. It's the highest it's been for 16 years. And I think it's rising up and people are getting more and more concerned. It relates to Brexit as well. Right. People link the two together. They're worried about staff shortages.
You've just fund the NHS a few billion more as an emergency and the immediate crisis subsides. And it doesn't solve the problem, but I think it takes it out of the headlines. That's what they'll do.
That's what they always do.
Yeah, but people are using the NHS. This is the thing that I think people get wrong, is that the public are constantly using these services. They've seen it change over time, and they're frustrated, and that's what's happening. They're not just going to be upset about Brexit. They're going to be upset about seeing more homeless people on the street, about how difficult it is to get appointments. And so 2018 is going to be a year where these trends and the mistakes and the defunct ideology of the Conservatives and their policies are going to play out and annoy people.
Education is at the highest level in people's concerns for 10 years. years, housing is at the highest level of concern
And
since the
that's the
70s,
challenge.
whereas the economy is something that's not being talked about.
That's a real challenge for Theresa May, and I think a lot does depend on who she appoints as her deputy, even if she does that, because she needs to effectively own the Brexit agenda. It's a bit like the Second World War. There needs to be a Churchill in charge, and I accept I can't really compare Theresa May to Winston Churchill, but Attlee handled all of the domestic politics during the Second World War. There needs to be a sort of Attlee figure who can run domestic policy, and there isn't that at the moment.
Where do you think this ends this year? I mean, do any of you expect a general election this year? I mean, does it go? You all said no last year, by the way, and
only if the House of Lords really does play up. But see, I can't foresee other circumstances.
And political parties intact at the end of this year?
Sort of. We all just carry stumbling on.
I mean, this is a sort of muddle-through scenario.
With no new leaders, you mean?
I mean, this is such a shame, isn't it? For such a crucial time for this country, we're essentially going to be treading water.
Well, it's less of a shame.
And what about third parties? Do any of you...
we disagree about that.
Do any of you think another party, a third party, a new politics? There have been a sort of a few...
No, I mean, there's a greater polarisation into the two-party politics, which is extraordinary.
Labour's changed, right? And Corbyn office is very different, right?
A
new Labour, but I mean, essentially, there is something very different here on offer that speaks to people's concerns and their needs and their worries for the
20
future.
points ahead in the
yes,
polls?
exactly. I think that too.
And that's a good question on which we will finish. But look, it is muddled through, essentially, and finish the year where we start. Thank you all very much, and Happy New Year.